On November 30th, 2022, someone started posting in a Facebook discussion group about the Idaho murders. This person was posting under the name Pappa Roger. Many people believe that this name, Pappa Roger, is a nod to the infamous Elliot Roger, who murdered 6 people and injured 14 more on a mass killing spree. He left his manifesto and he cited his killing spree as being motivated by his incel ideology. Incel meaning involuntary celibate. Elliot Rogers is an infamous incel, involuntary celibate person, meaning he can't get somebody of the opposite sex to sleep with him, and incels are, well, mad about that. On November 29th, 2022, the Pappa Roger account updated their profile picture. The profile picture came from the website CG Trader and was from an artist, Zin Su, who apparently randomly found this picture or a portrait of sorts and photoshopped it. That is the origin of this picture. Now, many people believe that the profile of this picture looks remarkably like Bryan Kohberger. Is Bryan Kohberger behind the Pappa Roger account? This video is going to take a look at all of the Pappa Roger postings from that Facebook group from November and December of 2022. And we are also going to take a very close look at Bryan Kohberger's Reddit survey that he posted to Reddit when he was finishing up his coursework at DeSalles University as a criminal justice student. And, well, that survey was part of his study. I think when we compare the two, you are going to be able to make some definitive conclusions as to who is behind the Pappa Roger account. Just take a look at all this information with me. Let's first take a look at the Pappa Roger postings on the Facebook group regarding the Idaho murders. On November 30th, 2022, of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. This evidence was released prior to autopsies. So here, Pappa Roger is pointing out that the evidence saying that the victims were murdered with a large fixed blade knife was released before the autopsies were done. So that means they knew that the murder weapon was a large fixed blade knife. Therefore, he is surmising there must be a sheath involved. This first post was posted on November 30th, 2022. Now remember, the probable cause affidavit was not released until January 3rd, 2023. This next post from December 1st reads, "This is on the high side of the house. They found evidence here. It is likely blood dripping from the killer or killers. Either they fled through this area or they were parked there. This being the most strategic entrance point to the house, it shows planning." Now you'll notice here that this post is in negative, and that indicates this is one of the posts that gives away the fact the person behind the Pappa Roger account is Bryan Kohberger. I'll be talking about that shortly. Did the killer or killers drive or walk to and from the scene? Thoughts? From December 2nd, 2022. On December 7th, Pappa Roger posts a link to a Google Trends account, and it's showing the searches for the house address. And he wants to know what people think of that there's been a lot of activity searching for the home address. Choice. On December 8th, Pappa Roger asks why the killer choose a knife as the weapon of choice. Again, I'd like you to note that this post is a negative, meaning it is one of the posts that gives away the fact that the Pappa Roger account was written by Bryan Kohberger. On December 8th, why did the killer choose that house over all others in the area? Also, on December 8th, Pappa Roger says, "I feel like the white car isn't relevant." This, of course, is interesting since Bryan Kohberger, the person who has now admitted guilt to killing Kaylee, Madison, Xana, and Ethan, drove a white car that was the same make as the car that the authorities were looking for from day one. Well, ever since that bullet went out. On December 8th, Papa Rogers also says thoughts on this body placement, and then Papa Roger places the bodies where he believes perhaps they were found. I think that this is a little creepy and goes a little too far for somebody who's going to be posting in a discussion group, but let me know what you guys think about this. On December 11th, why was the knife the weapon of choice? It's really interested in the answer that people may have to this question, as he's already asked this question just a few days ago. December 11th, 4 weeks in and no suspects. What is the motive? In many of Papa Roger's initial posts, as you read through the comments underneath the post, there's some very interesting commentary. On December 8th, Papa Roger posts, did the killer stop at 4 victims out of exhaustion, convenience, or lack of knowledge? Then someone says, I think he decided to be done when he unexpectedly had Ethan as a challenge. Someone else says, I think lack of knowledge or fear of getting caught because he had been there long enough. Someone else says, obviously, I don't know for sure, but it could be as simple as the girls on the bottom floor had locked their doors. The killer didn't want to get caught by walking around the house. Another person says, seems like the type of question only the killer would have an answer to. Papa Roger says, this entire board is assumptions. On December 11th, Papa Rogers, why was a knife the weapon of choice? He really must want to know the answer. He's already asked this question just a few days ago. December 11th, 4 weeks in and no suspects. What is the motive? December 12th, what do we think is the height and weight of the killer? December 11th, do we think the killer took anything from the house? On December 12th, Papa Rogers asks, is the killer still in Moscow, Idaho right now? Now, I turned this comment negative because we know it is December 12th is the day that Bryan Kohberger and his father left Pullman, Washington to take that trip across country back to Pennsylvania. We know that it was on December 13th that Bryan Kohberger in the car with his father were spotted in Colorado by a license plate reader. It's interesting that on the day that Bryan Kohberger leaves the Washington, Pullman, Moscow, Idaho area, that he finally asks, is the killer still in Moscow, Idaho right now? December 13th. How did the killer leave the scene? Did he clean up at all? Also on December 13th, not a new post from me, but still very relevant. How long was the killer in the house? Also on December 13th, 1 knife and 4 people. The killer took a big risk. The knife could have easily broken off or become ineffective after 1 or 2 murders. Are we sure there's only 1 knife involved? Also on December 13th, if the door was left open or the heat wasn't on, are we sure of the timeline of the deaths? It was 28 degrees and overcast the night of the murders. Also December 13th, fight me. Law enforcement is no closer to solving this than they were 30 days ago. Papa Rogers addresses another person in the discussion forum whose name is redacted. I posted it weeks ago. It has been removed. This is the address. Then says, Kelly was searched 40 times and Maddie 39 times on November 12th. Now, we know that this information is not correct. At least it has not been information that was disclosed from law enforcement by any means at any time since this crime. December 15th, day 32, and no motive. Same as day 1. Also on December 15th, any known internet suspect has been eliminated at this point. Fight me. Also on December 15th, the date of the killing was chosen on purpose. Thoughts? December 20th, day 37. Do we think law enforcement has a motive yet? Also on December 20th, a knife is a very risky weapon. If you know you are going to murder 4 people, do we think the killer also had another weapon, such as a stun gun or other knife? Or did they not know what they would encounter. Also on December 20th, Ethan didn't live at the crime scene. Very possible the killer didn't know he was there. Thoughts? Also note this comment in negative here. Also on December 20th, did the killer drive, walk, or some combination of both to the scene? December 21st, regardless of what has been released, I believe this is a sexually motivated crime. Also on December 21st, can someone post actual evidence showing where the bodies were found? Also on December 21st, I know this won't be popular, but this is where I think the victims were found. And we see Kaylee and Maddie together on the 3rd floor and Ethan and Xana separate on the 2nd floor in this depiction. December 22nd, day 39. The killer is not in the victim's immediate circle. Also on December 22nd, the killer is not a student. Thoughts? The Pappa account did not post to this Facebook group after Bryan Kohberger was arrested on December 30th, 2022. Sightings of this person, Pappa milling around that Facebook group, have proven to be false. The account did not post to the Facebook group after Bryan Kohberger was arrested on December 30th, 2022. Now let's take a look at Bryan Kohberger's Reddit survey from when he was a graduate student at DeSalles University. This is a 29-question survey with some subsets of these questions. You are going to see that this survey is comprised of some other surveys and questionnaires that are commonly given in the world of psychology or even health in general, and only 9 of the questions on this survey are actually original questions thought of by Bryan Kohberger. So let's just go through that really quickly. Questions 1 through 6 are just asking for basic demographic information. What's your age? What's your gender? Are you of Hispanic origin? What is your highest degree? You know, questions that are asked all the time when you start to fill out any kind of survey or questionnaire. Questions 7 through 11 are general questions that ask about the participant's criminal history. These are general questions that are asked anytime a survey is looking for somebody's criminal history. Questions 11 through 14 are comprised of a generalized risk factor assessment for criminal behavior. Questions 13 through 23 are the questions we are going to be interested in taking a deeper look at, and we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. These are the questions that are uniquely from Bryan Kohberger. Question 24 and its subset are from the GAD-7 survey, or the Generalized Anxiety Disorder survey. This is a survey commonly used in psychiatry. Question 25 and its subset are from the PHQ, or Patient Health Questionnaire 9 survey. These are questions commonly used in the field of psychiatry, psychology, and just you might answer these questions when you go to see your general health practitioner. Questions 26 and its subset are from the GASP, Guilt and Shame Proneness Scale, and this is a measure of moral emotions in the public and private transgressions. It basically measures if people feel guilt or shame when they do something that is not socially acceptable. Question 27 and its subset are from the Toronto Empathy Scale, and this questionnaire measures how much empathy a person has. Do you feel for other people? Do you relate to other people? Do you feel something when you see another person is going through something difficult or joyful? Do you have empathy towards other people? Question 28 and its subset are from the General Temperament Scale, and this is a measure of someone's temperament. Are you hot-tempered? Are you patient? Do you blow your stack quickly, or do you tend to, exercise some discretion and give some quiet consideration to difficult situations? Question 29 and its subset are from the Brief Self-Control Scale, which measures cognitive control, emotional regulation, and behavioral inhibition. This has very much to do with pathological and criminal behavior, and sometimes is used in the field of psychology or psychiatry to assess if people are leaning in that direction towards certain pathologies. Since we know that only questions 13 through 23 are Bryan Kohberger's own unique questions, let's read through those questions. How was your life right before the crime occurred? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your home? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this point. Did you travel? How did you travel and enter to the location that the crime occurred? After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target, the person or object? Please detail your thoughts and feelings. 17. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? 18. Before making your move, how did you approach your victim or target? Please be detailed in what you were thinking and feeling. 19. What was the first move you made in order to accomplish your goal? Please detail any thoughts and feelings at this point. Number 20. How did you accomplish your goal? Please explain what you were thinking and feeling. 21. Before leaving, is there anything else you did? 22. How did you leave the scene? 23. After committing the crime, how were you thinking, or what, were you thinking and feeling? Now let's go back to some of the questions from the Pappa Rogers survey. December 2. Did the killer or killers drive or walk to and from the scene? Thoughts? Kind of a weird question, right? Well, let's take a look at Bryan Kohberger's DeSalles survey questionnaire, question number 15, one of the only questions that was uniquely his. How did you travel to and enter the location that the crime occurred? He's also interested in how the perpetrator got to the crime scene. Kind of interesting, right? Now, this next question from Pappa Rogers, I think really gives it away. December 8th. Why did the killer choose that house over all the others in the area? Decent question, right? Well, let's take a look at question number 17 from Bryan Kohberger's DeSalles University Reddit survey. Why did you choose the victim or target over others? Pappa Roger asks, why did the killer choose that house over all the others in the area? Bryan Kohberger's Reddit survey says, why did you choose that victim or target over others? The way these two questions are phrased is very similar. Why was one choice made over other available choices? This is not the way that a person would typically necessarily phrase this question. So those are 2 out of Bryan Kohberger's 9 original questions from the Reddit survey that are directly asked by Pappa Roger and the University of Idaho Murders Facebook group. 2 out of 9. I mean, they are questions that are directly taken from the Reddit survey, language use and all. But then there are other questions from Bryan Kohberger's Reddit survey, 9 questions that are originally his, that are addressed in the University of Idaho Murders Facebook discussion group. Like on December 11th, he says, do we think the killer took anything from the house? This gets at the heart of question 21 from Bryan Kohberger's survey. Before leaving, is there anything else you did? Well, what else would you do other than to take something, right? And then there's this post from December 1st. This is on the high side of the house. They found evidence here. It's likely blood dripping from the killers. Either they fled through this area or they were parked there. This being the most strategic entrance point to the house, it shows planning. Well, this would be an answer to Bryan Kohberger's Reddit survey question number 22. How did you, the killer, leave the scene? Well, Pappa Rogers just answered that question now, didn't he? In the Facebook discussion group about the murders. And then, of course, there is perhaps the most telling post of all, which was Pappa Roger's first post on November 30th. Of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. This evidence was released prior to autopsies. Well, Bryan Kohberger, now that we know he is the admitted killer of the 4 victims of this horrible crime. And then, of course, there is perhaps the most telling post of all, which was Pappa Roger's first post on November 30th. Of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. This evidence was released prior to autopsies. Well, Bryan Kohberger, now that we know he is the admitted killer of the 4 victims of this horrible crime, he, at that time, aside from law enforcement, would be the only person that would know that law enforcement had found a knife sheath at the scene of the crime. Just like Pappa Rogers seemed to know that as well. And then, as I pointed out earlier, on December 12th, Pappa Roger asked, is a killer still in Moscow, Idaho right now? And that just happened to be the day when Bryan Kohberger left the area to travel across the country with his father to go home to Pennsylvania. Does this provide you enough evidence to believe that Bryan Kohberger is behind the Pappa Roger account? Leave a comment below letting us know what you think. We all want to know what you think, and I really want to know what you think about this.